Have you ever seen Mr. Epstein possess any other foreign country's passport?
No. Or any passport, including an American one.
If Mr. Epstein was talking about connections he had with foreign nations or entities, is there anyone he would most commonly refer to when speaking to you?
He, over the period of time, mentioned a lot of them, and some he would repeat at some periodicity, some he would mention once, but it's kind of a muddle of, but it was a pretty regular flow,
Was there anyone he mentioned more often than others?
more often. Maybe several times he'd mention the Queen of England.
The Queen of England?
Yeah, the one that died.
Did you ever get the impression that Mr. Epstein was trying to get close with people of power, influence, wealth to better shield himself from any type of scrutiny?
No, it seemed to me that that was the milieu that he operated in. And so it made sense to me, in terms of advice he was giving me, that he was dealing with the most sophisticated people, and they were his clients.
And so, based off that response, would it be fair to say that you would believe that could be part of his con, was touting all of these connections he had all around the world?
As I look back at it today, I'm positive it was his con. I mean, as positive as I could know. I mean, the founders of Google, the President of the United States, the King of Saudi Arabia, go on and on. It was almost, every month I'm off to do this with that, or I'm going here and there. And he was in a trust position, and foolishly, I never questioned. He was just, that it wasn't just, they was bullshitting me, or these weren't really his clients.
And is it your testimony today that if Jeffrey Epstein was enriched by his connection to you, that all of that enrichment was gained through theft, deceit, and or without your knowledge?
I'm not sure I understand the question. Do I know where Jeffrey got his money? I know he stole money from us. I believed he had substantial income from these make-believe clients that afforded him the lifestyle that he had. That made sense to me.
And you got engaged in 1992. Do I have that correct?
September 8th, 1992.
And you were married then in the following year, 1993?
1, 2, 3. That's how I remember that one.
And at any point after your engagement and your ultimate marriage, did you ever engage in any extramarital affair or sexual contact with anyone other than your wife?
No one. I'm really happy you asked that question. that connected to? Oh.
Is it, Mr. Wexner, is it your testimony here today that Mr. Epstein's wealth came from not only yourself, but also this extensive network of clients that also were wealthier, otherwise influential individuals?
No question. Absolutely.
And, you know, sitting here today, with the benefit of hindsight being 2020, how do you think that the United States Congress could prevent the crimes and, in your words, cons and deceits that Mr. Epstein and by extension Ms. Maxwell committed on victims around the world and specifically in the United States?
Well, I would hope that this interview or whatever it is today would help you to understand that he was a crook and a con man. And in hindsight, you know, looking back, he would make Bernie Madoff look like a Boy Scout. So complete, so diabolical. I mean, just incredible, sinister. If I were giving the government advice, I'd tell the IRS to look into Jeffrey. He couldn't have made all that money and spent all that money and had the lifestyle he did and be the crook that he was and pay taxes. So if he would do the things that he did to those women and do the things that he did to me, then anything is possible, I believe. And so Al Capone went to jail for being a crook and tax evasion. It would be so obvious to me today that now that I know Jeffrey's a crook and the things he did and the people he was associated with, there was a lot of money and he got it from a lot of people. I can't believe that he had time to really work because he was playing so goddamn much and I never knew it. If it's my attorney or your attorney, I don't even know if I would assume you're an attorney, but if you had one, and every time you talked to him and he said, I'm in the office working on your stuff, I don't think you'd run over there to see whether he was working on your stuff or believe that he wasn't in the office. But the con was so just crazy. I mean, I've searched my memory and say, why didn't I pick up clues? And I think he could trick me all over again if I was, if I was in that position of trust with someone like that. Really bad, I think, unbelievable stuff to me now that I look back. People that he said he knew, I believe he knew them. People that he said he worked for or where he went, but you don't do what he did and just rob one bank. I think bank robbers rob a lot of banks. That's how I look at him.
Are you aware, did any other individual come to you at any point and make clear to you that they felt they had been defrauded or otherwise wronged by Mr. Epstein in any way?
No, and crazily enough, no one ever called for a reference.
No one ever called you for a reference?
No one. People would call that he said, like the chief technologist of Google. And then a guy would call up and say he was the chief technologist of Google and I want to build a boat. So somebody says that they know the chief technologist. A guy calls you up and says, hello, I'm the chief technologist. I didn't, I mean, I could have been talking to an actor in hindsight. I mean, it's just, I don't think I've ever been conned before. I've seen movies about it. It's like, I think if the government really understands that, then a lot of things you'd be able to dig into that, aren't he should be exposed.
All right. I think that ends it for us right now. We'll go off the record.
We can go back on the record. I've got just a few sort of individual cleanup questions about things we've talked about earlier. I'll just move through them chronologically, going all the way back to when you first hired Mr. Epstein. If you could just articulate what you recall about what you thought you were getting from him. You described what he ended up doing for you, but what did you understand yourself to be hiring him for at the time?
You got to figure out. Well, when I met Jeffrey, I had somebody managing my personal stuff because there's just a lot of stuff suddenly, complexity in my personal life. And I didn't realize that I had so much complexity until one day it's there. So to me, it was my personal side of stuff was like one day it's cold and the next day it's a blizzard. And I realized I got houses and stuff that should be inventoried and, buying a car, selling a car, with just a lot of stuff. And hired Harold, and just to make sure that I wanted somebody who had accounting, not financial sense, because I wasn't looking to make more money, just someone to kind of manage things. And so today, I guess you'd call it a family office person, because I wasn't looking for accounting and I wasn't looking for investment. I was just looking for someone to just make sure that everything was in order and nothing crazy was happening. And I had sensed that Jeffrey, or that Harold wasn't doing a good enough job, just didn't have the bandwidth for the complexity. And mentioned to Bob and Wendy that things were a mess, or I was worried they were a mess. And then coincidentally, drove down the street, as I mentioned, met him, and I asked him, I don't know, it was 6 months later or a year later, something, talking to Bob and Wendy, they said, we should call him. So I called him and said, you remember when we met? I said, I've got a guy running my stuff, personal stuff, because I wanted to keep business away from personal. And could you take a look at it? You're smart, you're financially oriented. And he said, it's not what I do, but you're Wendy's friend, you're Bob's friend. I'll come and take a look. So he started doing that and said, Harold isn't very competent. Nothing's amiss, just it's not tidied up the way you think you should, way I think a professional would think things should be tidied in your financial personal life. And I said, well, but you looked at this, what do I owe you? And again, part of the con was, I don't want to be paid. And so after 2 years of him sorting it out, cleaning it out, I thought, started to pay him for the work. And I don't remember what it was at the time, but in terms of professional fees and whatever, I thought it was fair. And that's how it happened. So I think I'm giving you a long answer, but to understand in context, because if I just say yes or no, you won't understand it. And I really want this whole group to understand it. And I never would have guessed I was being conned. Never, ever. the deceit was so subtle. Yes, I know.
Answer the question.
Yeah, okay.
I'm sure we all appreciate the stories. We're just
Okay.
trying to
Yeah.
answer the questions
Okay.
they actually wanted the answers to.
Okay.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
I hope it is.
And could I ask you, I think you said in the last hour, it was your understanding that Mr. Epstein, while he was working for you, also had other clients. Is that right?
Yes.
So would that mean that his work for you, you understood it to be part-time?
I wouldn't describe it that way. You know, I knew it wasn't I thought it wasn't full-time because he had other clients of substance, real substance.
As a listener, it sounds like substantial demands that you're describing. You were, and of course are, one of the wealthiest people in the country, managing all of your personal affairs. I would think would typically demand all of somebody's bandwidth. It sounds like that was an issue with the guy before Epstein. How was he able to do that job, but also do work for other clients at the same time?
Well, like Peg does the work now. I think you could supervise the work, overview it, which isn't the work that I do, and say you could do really thorough work if you were doing it 3 or 4 days a month, certainly a week or a day a month, just focusing on these things because there were accountants and tax lawyers and other people. And then once in setting up, as an example, I didn't have the idea to inventory furniture or valuables. And it's like, you know, how could you have all silverware in your house? And I didn't count forks and spoons. And it's like, Jeff said, people could be walking out with forks and spoons. I said, gee, that's a good idea. We ought to have an inventory. But then there was, I hired a lady to be like the house manager who had run the U.S. Embassy in Rome. And she said, yeah, I know how to do this. And I said, well, why don't we keep inventories of stuff? And she said, well, yeah, I could do that. So she did that as kind of a puny example, but I wouldn't have had the idea. But then all the things were inventoried. That wasn't work for me or Jeffrey. It was just regularly done.
Answer the question.
Okay.
A discrete question on a different topic. We know that at one point you owned a property in Palm Beach. It was a large oceanfront estate. We understand that you sold that estate to a guy named Abe Gossman, and that later Mr. Trump and Mr. Epstein got into a bidding war over that property. Do you have any knowledge of, or did you have any involvement in that dispute between Mr. Epstein and Mr. Trump?
No.
I'd like to touch on a few specific allegations that have been made with respect to Mr. Epstein's crimes. Maria Farmer has been discussed several times today. I'll try not to repeat that too much, but there are a few aspects of her story that I did want to touch on with you. Ms. Farmer has said that the home that we've discussed, you said Mr. Kessler sold it to Mr. Epstein, it's adjacent to your property. Ms. Farmer has said that that home at the time was guarded by your security staff. And at least one member of your security staff told the Washington Post that that was accurate, at least at the time, which I think was 1996. Do you have any sense of why this home, that at that point was not on your property and wasn't your home, would have been guarded by your security staff?
Objection to the hearsay, but answer.
No.
Do you have any knowledge as to whether or not the home was guarded by your security staff, either then or now?
Then for sure not. My daughter lives there now with her husband, so I'm sure they pay attention to it, but I don't know for sure that, because it's part of the family, that they pay attention to it, but that's as close as I can get.
When it was owned by Mr. Kessler and Mr. Epstein, you have no knowledge of whether or not it was guarded by your security staff?